Even though it is unashamedly derivative, it wears that badge of honor on its sleeve. Remember when the Q-Timex launched in 2019? It feels like 10 years ago, and we all went wild talking about how great of a novelty it was. I mean, this watch was very much the precursor to the madness that was the Moonswatch. And what made this watch so significant was that it was inspired by actual history and did have some great ties to the original Q-Timex of the past. Now, a few years later, we have seen the mania linked with Quartz and Moonswatches and all the parallels that it brings. People are seeing that there is a far more affordable side to this watch hobby that manages to bring out hidden gems. Well, with this launch of the next generation of the Q-Timex GMT that now uses an official Ronda Swiss quartz movement instead of a Seiko quartz movement, I can definitively say that I think this is one of the most perfectly executed GMT watches that I have seen in a very long time. And I know what you must be thinking. Yes, you heard me right. This is being said about a Timex that uses almost everything Rolex in its makeup. But even by copying something verbatim, it has managed to create its own refined image of what a 70s or 80s inspired model would look like. And it has been so well handled. I am shocked that it hasn't been spoken about more. This is almost in every way better executed than the Moonswatch. It is an homage in a similar way, it is quartz, but it also doesn't fail by handling itself with such great authority. And in this video I want to expand upon why I think this design was so well done. And since we're talking about a 70s or 80s thematic design, on the wrist today is the Oris Divers 65. Now, something cool to talk about on the channel is that I am receiving an Oris in the post tomorrow. So you will see a wrist shot of this on the screen. I don't know what the watch looks like just yet, but the review of this new dual time will be up on the channel next week, and I really look forward to sharing it. Oris was nice enough to reach out to me and offer the watch to review. And why I decided to take this one in is because it has that level of 90s nostalgia that I really want to explore and expand upon. Right, so if you want a quick take from me about what I think about this GMT and what it represents, yes, this is an ideal watch to own when starting the hobby. Yes, it's a great value proposition for what you are getting. Yes, this is a superb alternative to the more expensive options of Tudor GMTs or Rolex GMTs. Whether new or experienced in this hobby, I think you will have so much fun with this watch. I've been looking at it often over the last few days, and to a point now where I feel like I should be getting one. And that level of enjoyment comes from the affordability and everything I've mentioned, but also just how well it's been put together. Okay, let's begin by talking about the GMT. The GMT complication is everywhere. Every single brand under the sun is trying to climb onto the horse at this point. And if we're referring back to the Moonswatch parallel, a couple of videos I've made about the subject, I've wanted the watch to be considered a speedmaster for everyone. This is most definitely a GMT for everyone. It's no secret to say that the GMT has such a practical application. It's great for everyday use. The extra hour hand can be used to track 24-hour time or a different time zone. The fact that GMTs also come standard with date complications adds another dynamic to the equation. And even though the GMT and its makeup as a complication is quite serious in our hobby, I just love the notion that with a complication like this, you're able to get it at an affordable price and enjoy it. But we can't go too far into this discussion without talking about the Rolex aesthetic and GMT design. You know, we've gotten to a point now where the Rolex GMT design is basically analogous. Everyone's using it, and you can see how everything's been borrowed and copied and moved along. Even though the original Q-Timex did have similar design cues, and they've obviously carried them over with this new model. And we could say that this level of repetitiveness now is tiring. But if we eliminate that the Rolex design is a part of this equation, we forget that Rolex even existed, and judge this watch purely by how it stands, I honestly think that it is a very impressive package. You don't need to hear it from me or anyone else about how the GMT complication works or how it appears, because it is so ingrained into our watch culture now that most of us know a lot about it. I guess you could say very easily that this is a Rolex-inspired homage, especially when we look to the color schemes and the entire arrangement. A, it's a design and style that is recognized universally, and B, it just works. The arrangement allows for you to very easily calculate 3 separate time zones. But even through its complexity, offers an extremely minimalistic exterior. And that's where most Rolex designs triumph: timeless design, minimalist exterior, and easy on the eyes. If we are to dig deeper into this well-oiled homage, we could say that a lot of things have been taken a bit too literally, even down to the typeface and color schemes used on the bezel insert. If we don't look to the dial and the bezel, we can see that the case and the bracelet is entirely original. This is where the design steps away from the 50s motifs and focuses more on 70s elements. And for what it's worth, even though there is a clash to these two timelines, it works extremely well. And in fact, you look at it overall and you would swear that this is fully integrated. Somehow, some way, they have managed to develop a relationship between these styles. From the tank tread bracelet to the minimalist knurling around the bezel. But this is what I wanted to talk about the most, and the reason why this watch is getting the spotlight. Choosing quartz and affordability. I think the novelty of having a quartz GMT is something to relish in. You know, the beauty of quartz is it never stops. It's always going. You never have to wind it, and when it comes to setting it, you're adjusting the date or a time zone. So the fact that you can have this watch running non-stop while it calculates these two time zones and stays on time. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything better than this, because there is an insane level of practicality that comes with a design and an approach like this. You can treat this as an everyday watch or wear it once a month. The added beauty is that you are getting a ronda Swiss quartz movement, and as we know, Swiss quartz is great. Now granted, you're not getting a true GMT watch because that second GMT hand doesn't jump between the points as you set it. It does have to be manually set and does a full rotation around the dial. But even still, it's the culmination of these elements that drives home a really exciting product. It's an affordable GMT, fully functional, bidirectional bezel insert. The watch is 38mm in diameter with a 12mm height. Has a gorgeous domed acrylic crystal, a full stainless steel construction, and a 50-meter water resistance. And since we're talking about these details, let's expand even more. The reason why I think it's such a perfectly executed GMT is when we look to the dial and we notice things like the elements have been applied. Every single plot has a steel surround. You can see that they have eliminated unnecessary text and kept the most important things there. The scale and the size of the hands and how well that hour hand corresponds with the plots because it lacks the Mercedes dividing lines. To differentiate it, the running seconds hand doesn't have loom plots applied to it. And if we needed one thing to show that Timex cares about the details, they framed the date window. And I have to ask, how much better does it look with a white frame around it? The team responsible understands that this corresponds with the rest of the dial. It makes it more prominent, and now the date window feels like it's purposefully there. So everything, the scale, the proportions, balance, use of these Rolex motifs, no doubt. But all was executed tastefully, not mockingly. You can see that a lot of care and attention went into this watch, and it does come across as a natural evolution of the original Q-Timex. So why aren't more people talking about this watch? Is it because the Q-Timex has already had its time in the sun? Because I honestly believe that this new watch deserves way more fanfare than it currently is getting. And I sit back and think that for $200 you're getting all of this watch that covers so many criteria and offers such a well-balanced design for an affordable price. And this is where I think more watch brands should be looking. I don't in any way think this is just merely an homage, a replica, a copy of a Rolex model, and leave it at that. This watch will never compete with the original. But from that level of affordability, accessibility, and fun point of view, it just looks so good. And yes, we can all agree that the Rolex Submariner and GMT designs have been repeated so much that it has become virtually stale. We already look at them with a slight aversion before even taking them in. But the Q-Timex GMT is an example of a watch, I believe, that manages to bring something fresh to the table. And even though it is unashamedly derivative, it wears that badge of honor on its sleeve. So that's it in a nutshell. But from that affordability, accessibility, and fun point of view, I can't see what's stopping us with a watch like this. You have to have big lungs to do this.